Hi everyone, it's Tonia, Tea with Tonia, and I'm here today with the beautiful, wonderful lightworker, Melissa Simonson. And I am so excited to be back. It's been a little bit after the holidays and everything since I've came on and done an interview, but I'm excited today to share Melissa's story and also just to be back on sharing the wonderful people in my life, as that is the purpose of doing the Tea with Tonia, is really just sharing extraordinary people in everyday life. And I feel like ever since I started my business, I really started to meet these really incredible, incredible people through workshops and just different things that I did that never really existed when I worked in a corporate environment or whatever environment. And it just hit me. And also, really, my purpose is to spread joy. And I feel like every time I put on the TV or I put on the news, there's something negative that's being there. So this is also my way of putting out into the world the good that exists in mine, and just kind of, combating all the negativity that's out there and giving a little positive hope to people out there. So Melissa, I met, is it 2 years, 2018. So
Yeah, 2 years
it is
ago.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. That's freaky.
Yeah,
I didn't
just
realize
shy. We're coming up on it.
that.
Yeah.
I met 2 years ago in a course, the Mama Gina School of the Womanly Arts, which is like the greatest thing in the world. And now she invited me to go to her spiritual center. And ever since she did, I've been going there. So yeah, and she's just a great and wonderful friend and human being. So I am going to let her just say who she is, what she does, and all the magic that is you.
Well, first of all, it's wonderful to be here with you. I've been seeing you doing these tea with Tonias, and you're like, I want to do a tea with Tonia. So here I am. So I am, I guess for the sake of titles, you could call me a self-love and relationship coach. I have had a business for the past 13 years. It's really a soul calling, though. I, from a young age, knew that I was meant to serve and to minister in various ways. I'm also a singer-songwriter and performer, so I like to find ways to sort of create a juxtaposition between my compassion and empathy, my deep spiritual awareness, my music, and my gift of words. And so, that shows up in multiple ways. I have a one-on-one coaching and group coaching practice in which I work mostly with women who really struggle with people pleasing. In the world of psychology now, we're really big on talking about codependency, anxious attachment. So my clients really fall in those categories. And they get really anxious in love, and they have a hard time being rooted in themselves and what they're needing, and tend to be always thinking about the other person. And so, and similar to my own journey, they deeply want to feel chosen. Like, they choose partners that are often unavailable, and they just really want to feel like this, like what it would feel like to have a partner show up in their life 100%, just claiming them fully in his or her life. And so my brand is Choose Yourself First, because that's really what I've come to learn, is that in order to experience someone choosing us so fully, we have to flip from the old pattern of, okay, I'm going to choose them and then they'll choose me back, to realize that it's actually every relationship is a reflection of the relationship I'm having with me. Yes. And so I have to choose me first in order to create the space for someone to show up and choose me so fully. So that's really at the essence of everything I do, whether I'm leading workshops or my one-on-one or my group programs. It's really just various reflections of how do you do that? How do you choose yourself first?
Yeah. I love your message so much. And not even, it's just even in the title of your brand, choose yourself first. Even if they don't even work, the fact that they just get that nugget from the moment that they have to just sign on to your, it's such a powerful message. One, I had to learn for myself as well. And just realizing the capacity that I was able to love someone was at the capacity that I could love myself.
Yes.
And just all of these things. But, no one's going around telling us this. It's really thinking, once I meet this partner, then I will. And it's no, it never works that way.
Right.
So I just love, the Choose Yourself First, just magnificent. And just doing that and getting that message out there.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've done some work with you too. So I just know also, you're just magnificent in what you do. But then the other thing that I love talking about, right, is like, I feel like also nowadays we always see the finished product, or right, like we
Yeah.
want to get on when, oh, I'm doing great now, just like me doing these interviews. I used to have stage fright, but now, and so a big question that I love to ask people that I'm interviewing, because what I learned is in the pain is where we reclaim the part of ourselves that sort of is like our authentic expression. So
Yeah.
I would love to know, like, what was your pain point or whatever it was along your journey that you
Yeah.
had to overcome in order for you to be living in this, you know, being and doing the work that you are, being the divine expression that is you.
Yeah. So there's sort of multiple layers to that. I sort of the first sort of just baseline is I had to overcome a lot of shame, right? And like when we understand now, Brene Brown's work around
Mm-hmm.
shame, she talks about shame is the deep belief, the sense that we are not worthy, that we are
Yeah.
not worthy of love. And you wouldn't have, if you would ask me, do you think you're worthy of love? I would have been like, of course, because like who would say no? I mean, most people wouldn't. But what I didn't realize is that, so, I mean, I came out of the womb and, as you know, one thing I didn't mention, I'm an astrologer as well. And so you can
Yes.
see it in my chart. And, I just had this immediate orientation towards self-sacrifice. And I'm like this deeply generous, loving person. I love that about myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't understand the idea of how two people, you could create win-win situations in which both people's needs are met simultaneously without anyone ever having to sacrifice. So I wanted to be good. I wanted to be the sweet girl, the good girl. I also grew up in a pretty tumultuous, situation in my family, some mental illness that we were dealing with there, and a lot of anger that, so I grew very anger averse in a lot of ways, although I had quite the temper myself when I was young, but in terms of receiving anger. And so I took on people pleasing. I had an anxious attachment pattern. Again, with anxious attachment, it's like nature versus nurture in terms of you could look in my chart and you could go, yeah, like this person could likely develop an anxious attachment pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also the home environment that really fostered that. And so I would fall really hard and really fast. Like at a really young age, I had tremendous anxiety in love. And the thing with anxious attachment is that it immediately creates the other person as the center of security. So once the attachment's formed, it's like I must do whatever I need to at all costs to maintain my sense of security, right? So then what that's going to do is that's going to heighten the shame aspect of like, oh no, I can't show that part of myself because that part's not lovable. And I can't say this because what if I make this person angry or they reject me?
Mm-hmm.
And so in that, I was constantly rejecting myself for the sake of trying to secure this sense of security outside of myself, this love, this inner peace. And so it was an arduous journey. I mean, I just, in my teens, I remember being 15 and my best friend sitting with me in my living room as I'm crying, and I had met this guy, and we'd probably been like going out for like a month, and then he was like ghosting me, and she was like, "Please God, let him call Melissa so that she can have peace," because I was just miserable. I couldn't, when that attachment system gets triggered, when you have anxious attachment, you can't eat, you can barely sleep, you can't think of anything else. It's just awful. And so I just continued to repeat that cycle. I had some longer term relationships in my 20s, but I was also really quick to attach. And so I wasn't always discerning, is this person really right? There were some nice guys I even dated in my 20s. It wasn't like I dated all jerks, but they weren't really aligned. And what would happen is a couple years into the relationship, I'd kind of wake up going, I'm not really even that attracted to you. But I had been so out the gate, like, let's secure this, like, let's talk about our future. Let's, and then, the deeper parts that I'm working on a one-woman show where I'm going to be talking about this. This is where there's like that shame piece I continue to be healing is like, I was the other woman multiple times in my 20s. Again, when you're in that space where you're not choosing you and you deeply want to have someone else choose you. You're going to do all kinds of, like, that's the perfect storm. Oh, I'm really going to set the stakes high where I'm going to be the other woman and hope this person chooses me. And, you know, of course, like, I wasn't thinking of it in terms of hurting another woman. It was like my wound just leading, just the please choose me, love me, and thinking that if it was real love, that this would be justified and everyone would understand in the end. So I'm not the type of person to be the other woman. This is a unique circumstance, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it culminated when I moved to New York in 2014. And I, you know, when you move cross country, I mean, I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. And I ended up just, the first few months were great. And then I crashed and was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? You know, turn the city off. Like, this is so much. I didn't know yet how to meet needs yet. And I didn't really even understand fully with full clarity that, like, that whole body of work, which is now a huge part of what I do. And so I totally did the thing of like choosing someone. Everyone was like, don't date that guy. Like, he's basically a player, womanizer. But I just like fell into it and got attached. And then it just, like, without even going into detail, like, I got played, you know, but I played me. That's the thing. I'm not a, you know, but, you know, I stepped right into it and I created a victim villain scenario. And that's exactly what happened. And it was devastating. And I woke up the next morning. I was at my mom's in Wisconsin. She had back surgery. She was still in the hospital. And I was like in my childhood home, like laying on the floor, like, if this is what life is, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It was like the lowest I've ever been. And it was like an unwillingness, like something had to change.
Yeah.
And it was like full on, like, I love goddesses, right? I have Kuan Yin behind me. And it was actually that summer that I got this tattoo, which is hard to see. It says surrender, and it's the Kali yantra, and Kali is the goddess of destruction. She destroys our illusions. And I got this after really that journey, because I realized I fell in love with this essence of life that won't let us hold on to the things that don't serve us. And it did feel like everything I was grasping for was just ripped from my hands, because if we're grasping, that's how it will go, right? It doesn't have to. So then thus began like an even more, I mean, I've been a coach already for years. I've been on a spiritual journey. I started reading like Deepak Chopra and the Tao Te Ching when I was like 14, 15 years old. Like, I've always been on a path of self-awareness and growth. I started studying astrology when I was 8, but this was like the serious business of a waking up. Like, okay, like I just went all in, and I was pretty in a lot of ways for most of 2015, very much an inward journey, very lonely, very much just trying to find myself, you know, reading some extraordinary authors and really, like, you know, just working to challenge beyond the fear-based patterns I'd had. You know, I even went through a period of no spending for 90 days, no makeup for 90 days in time. So I basically took all of the things I'd normally go to as like, this is how I craft a character me. Like, I'll go buy a new outfit, I'll put makeup on. And I just really felt into, what does it feel like to not use these crutches and to just be stripped bare, you know, going to a nice event, but I'm not going to like put makeup on and I'm, you know, just, so there was a lot. So, I mean, I can keep sharing.
Yeah, but I just love it, because it's like well, you said like 1,000 things that were magnificent, but I think even from what you're saying right now, it's like, I think the gift in breaking free of the illusion is when we start to strip away anything that we identify with. So like what you said, like the makeup and the, you know, the spending, and for everyone, it's a different thing in doing that. I had my journey too, where, you know, you reach that rock bottom and you're like, oh my God, like, I don't want to participate anymore if this is the way it's going to be. Like, what do I need to do? And that's why I love asking this question, for people to also realize, 'cause we all have that moment. No one doesn't. It's just that it's really not spoken about very often, because there's so much shame and everything around it. But it's in that moment that we have the opportunity to choose something different, because it has to get really uncomfortable for us to choose, because it's hard to do the cleanup work.
Well, and for goodness sakes, I mean, when I entered into that toxic, like just stupid relationship, I had already been a self-love coach for, years. I mean, I started my business in 2006. This is 2015 when he's like, made up this whole tale to like get out of this thing. And like, the humiliation, but what I love is I love words, and I love when you look at the root of words, humiliation, at the root of it is the Latin word humus, which means earth. So it's really to be brought down to earth. And that's what that time was. And, Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith talks about when you're awakening out of victim consciousness, it's starting to move into any of this manifestor stage, or the stage where you start to realize that life is actually happening through you and then as you. There's usually a point where there's humiliation. And he said that it's a very common, it's like part of that process. When you've reached that, you're waking up, you're starting to go, oh crap, look at everything I created when I wasn't taking responsibility for my life.
And and that's the hardest thing, I think, to acknowledge, is just also, the victim conscious is great because it's never your fault. And it's always this, but you're always going to just have the same reality over and over again. But the hard work is starting to really get honest with ourselves. And I know that happened with me. It's just, I didn't like myself very much, I kind of hated it. And when it got real, I was like, well, this has to change. And so it's very hard to confront those demons.
Yeah. And there's this process, when I was really going through the awakening, to some outer people, it looked like I was being really harsh with myself. And there's something about, I think, now, like, I love gentleness and softness, and it's like the core of what I teach. But there's a certain point where, when we're really trying to awaken out of the illusions that have kept us trapped, we have to be ruthless, and we have to be willing to like feel the pain and face these fears. And so like the choice to, not, that choice to stop wearing makeup and not shopping. And like, I had like cut my hair really short before that, like a pixie. And then I just was like, well, I'm not spending money on anything physical, so I guess this thing is just growing out. And so I went through the awkward hair grow out stage without wearing makeup to try and make myself feel better. Right. It was very illuminating. And there was a lot that I got out of that time also, even just like the fact that there's just beauty is such an inner radiant thing. And that I would like in this grown out hairstyle that I didn't really choose. It was just sort of happening. I'd be walking on the street and I'd still have a man be like, I like your hairstyle. And I'm like, all right, to each their own. And I realized it's just like, you spend my time always trying to manipulate other people's experience of me. And when I'm not even trying to do that, it just doesn't matter. Each person is going to have their occurring world around who I am and what I'm bringing. So it's very liberating. There were days where I felt so mad. And so I had to be in the like, what's the point? It was very like that sort of existential, life is absurd. There were a lot of dark gray moments during that time, but there was a freedom that was starting to happen in that. And now I get to choose, like I'm wearing some makeup today, but that's like, because it's fun and it's pleasurable.
Yes.
I'm no longer attached to the way I'm experienced so much with that outwardly, as it's like, I like the way it feels when I put that time. It's an adornment now.
Well said.
Yeah.
So well said.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's, a lot of it is that we do to put on a show or to outward appearances and whatever it is. And then it's just like, my whole thing is joy. Why I'm talking about the pain, because you can't overlook the pain and then get to joy.
No.
If you want to experience true happiness, true joy, then we have to learn how to accept our pain. And like, I love it when you said the anger in it and embracing that and learning what it sounds like. And then after that, it's sort of like you could laugh at yourself and just realize like beauty isn't the outside. It's your inner radiance. It's your essence that comes out. And that it just doesn't matter how you look. It's just the way you never got it when people say, how are you being? Like your beingness.
Yeah.
And it's just walking around knowing that like you're worthy and worth it, or that you're just not putting on a show anymore. And then you just show up in a way that's just like, oh, so this is how you do it.
An aliveness that started to come forth. Yeah. And then with that, I started to learn in the deep loneliness. I started to understand. That's when I discovered and really dove into nonviolent communication. So I've done a lot of training in NVC. And I really started to understand something that was intuitive for me, which I love, that there was actually like a developed consciousness out there that you could cultivate, because I totally got that everything we feel is just telling us about, there's always needs underneath. Um, and that when we put attention on the need itself, we start to create the opening for that life energy to speak. And so it didn't take long once I started tapping into, regularly empathizing with myself, which was like just getting present to the inner world and realizing that all my pain isn't bad. It's like, wow, I just really had, like at that time, I had tons of unmet connection needs, like that were, a 3 out of 10 or lower in my experience. And so I started creating belonging and community. And sure enough, when I started saying yes to whatever life was bringing, because it also meant like saying yes to some invitations where even when I was tired, I'd be like, no, but it was like, no, like I trust that like life, it's like that thy will be done, right? My highest good is here available to me if I just start saying yes to what life is bringing. And then like, sure enough, pretty soon I was like going to the New York Vocal Improv Collaborative, and I was singing and creating and discovering like this whole world that I hadn't even had access to before, new friends. And then in 2016, I started dating a little bit again. So it was probably about 1.5 years between like waking up on the floor going, I can't do this anymore.
Call it dating yourself.
Yeah, to just being inward. And it was really like, I just had no desire. I felt like, I'm in New York, which there's, millions of people here, but I'm walking around going like, it's a freaking desert, I just working in a restaurant at that time. And and so I started being amongst people that shared more of my values. And so I was like, oh, he's cute. And, that started happening, but I still didn't know yet. When I started dating again, like April 2016, I met someone, then we ended up becoming friends, but I was starting to stand for myself because it was clear this man out the gate on our first kind of hangout date thing just was honest that he really didn't know, wasn't sure if he was built for like committed one-to-one relationship. And it was actually great. I was really grateful. Like we had this connection, but I was like, oh, okay, well that I'm not going to like create any idea of what that's going to be. But so that we kind of turned into a friendship. I probably was grieved the disappointment for like a month. And then I met someone else like in June of that year and got so swept up. And that was about a month, but then realized he wasn't really available for a relationship. In this time, I was working with a mentor, a woman I love in Wisconsin named Michaela Turcasso, and she is an intuitive. She's like brings like coaching with like Course in Miracles, meets like landmark seminar leader. She's really brilliant, and she's also a medium. So she speaks with your guides and gets messages. And I probably had maybe 4 or 5 sessions with her. It would be sort of like when I'd hit another growth point and it was like, oh, it's time to go deeper. And she's like, I consider her sort of like a spiritual aunt figure in my life.
Yeah, because sometimes we can't get the messages for ourselves. Yeah. So there's only so much we could do before support then does have to come in to, guide us along the way too. And we have to get in action and start dating again to also then learn what we don't want. Because what we want in our head is not the same that happens in reality. So it is going out there. So you're going to hit the pavement a couple of times like, oh God, this isn't it. And then, you recollect and you start over again and doing it that way.
So she really helped me see and understand she didn't call it anxious attachment. I sort of learned about that more in the months that followed, but this helping me understand how there's sort of like the me in time, the human egoic self that does have certain needs and I can't bypass those. So it was like understanding, how do I take care of wounded little Melissa in relating, but also that there was some fears I had to face. And I called it the sitting on my hands days, where I wanted to text, but what deeply I wanted was to feel someone fully showing up, ready to like be in relationship and to feel the gift of being cherished. And so I had to be like, nope, nope, nope. Like, I know you hate this. You don't know when you're going to hear from him. And this is
Right.
awful. Just like clean your room and do other things and go exercise. And like, but it would be the agony. And anyone I know who's watching this, who deals with anxious attachment, if you didn't know that's what it was, but you're going, oh my God, that's me every time I fall for someone. It's excruciating. You know, I would get really skinny during those times because it was really hard to like even eat. And so, you know, but she, like, what was great about my work with Michaela is she just gave me just that clarity, just to like be like, okay, this is the next thing. This is what I got to face. This is
Right.
you know, and she's all about really, which is at the essence of my work, which is really about awakening from the illusion of separation from the divine. Right. And so all of these behaviors that we take on to try and maintain this external attachment is because we are not understanding that there's just one thing here and it's living through in and as us, and that the idea that we need to secure something and sacrifice anything is just, it's a total illusion, right? But we have to face down those fears, right? So then it was like I had that dating thing, and then a month later I met someone else, and that was like the last person before I met my husband, all at the end of 2016. And it was like really facing, I had this story that I would be forgotten. Like, it's so funny to me now to even think about it. But like a man, as long as a man was sort of, I was like in front of his face, it would be like he couldn't resist me. And so it was like this deep fear that he would go on about his life and like get just so distracted by the other things that he just was like forgetting about me. And that if I wasn't doing something, if I wasn't showing how amazing I am, how charming I am, how irresistible I am, that it would just like, he would just like, yeah, and it's like, and, you know, and so it was that fear of, well, maybe, you know, if I just text him or, you know, and like planted that seed in his mind, oh, now he's going to be thinking about me again. And then he'll be with me.
There's always been manipulation behind it for a need that was self-serving.
Yes. And so I had to be with this person who is my friend to this day. He is a musician and he was touring abroad. And he was gone for like a month and a half, and like halfway through decided that he wanted to just be where he was and not be in communication. And I just had no idea what this was going to be when he came back. But something inside was like, you just keep this door open, because, and I don't, you know, now where I'm at now, like that wouldn't be a choice I'd make, but I've really come to learn that every choice we make, where we're at in consciousness, it's the choice we needed to make at that time. Absolutely. And this was like me really holding like this deep fear that this person is just gonna like, that basically they don't really value me unless so I had to be with, like, I don't know when or even if when he comes back, but for me, it was healing to just be rooted in like queen, like would it mean to hold myself as a queen, like, and like I'm not forgettable. I'm extraordinary. I'm lovable. I'm worthy of so much. And like, and then I got to experience this person coming back, reaching out immediately, you know, and both of us realizing this wasn't going to be something we could continue with moving forward. But it was this powerful moment of both of us actually choosing ourselves.
Yeah.
And then that, the light bulb went on, and I was like, he is choosing me. He wants my happiness, and he's telling me, I know that if I were to do this, I would be half in and half out, and I care about you, and it would be agonizing to me to do that to you. He's like, I don't even myself want to go through the pain of feeling how painful that would be for you. And I really got it, and I felt so cherished by his choice. And then what's amazing, what started to come out of that was remembering, like really literally going back through time and thinking about everyone I'd ever been with and realizing how much, like pretty much all, except for a small smidgen of the men, but pretty much most of them think I'm amazing, even to this day. And like, all of a sudden I was like, all of these men, each one of them chose me. Each one of them.
You couldn't see it, right?
I couldn't see it. And they were choosing me when they chose to end it, or they were choosing, like, they weren't the right person. And so they were choosing my happiness. They were choosing my well-being, but I couldn't see it. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was like when I had this awakening, I got to have a new history, a
Mm-hmm.
new experience of all the love that had ever been. And I realized I have been so loved this whole time. And I really then also got how much there was nothing wrong with me. Like, it
Yeah.
really dropped in. And
Yeah.
then
It's
I got that I just need to take care of myself. So what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that's perspective. Like that's the power of perspective shift where none of your history changed.
No.
Like the story was still the same. All that changed was the way that you were viewing yourself. And now that you weren't coming through the fear lens of I'm unforgettable, you
Yeah.
start to see how like, oh my God, that wasn't even the truth. But that's the reality we create
Yeah.
when we're living behind fear.
Yeah.
Or, and the same thing happens when we're then living empowered, right? The
Yeah.
whole life story is then empowered, but it's just that simple switch of just
Yeah.
what's the lens you want to view your story through, what you choose to see.
Yes.
It's huge.
And what was so powerful as this whole journey was going on, and you're going to love this because it's so going to segue into your work with money, is
Mm.
that simultaneously, when I started having that needs toward the end of 2015, and I had come out of the deep dark, I'd gone through that 90-day no makeup, no shopping, and I started to build community in my life. What naturally came was a desire for contribution again. I had really taken a step back from my business in those couple years after moving to New York. I always, if someone came to me and like wanted an astrology session or something, like I would do it, but I wasn't full on marketing myself. I was just working at a restaurant, kind of being like, what the hell am I doing here in New York? I don't even want to work in restaurants. But it was just this time, like, I think it was important. I had my baseline income needs met, and I had to kind of pull myself out of that. It just, you can't, it's really hard to create a business when you're in total scarcity. So I just needed to focus on getting that stuff in order. And then once I started having like my basic needs met and community and belonging, and I felt seen and I felt loved, it was like inherent that I wanted to contribute again. So I ended up kind of dusting off the program and kind of recreating this program I'd done in 2013 called 28 Days of Self-Love. And I had like 5 women sign up, which for me was great at that time. And then that sort of led me to starting to like sign on more one-on-one clients. And I went from the end of 2015 being like, oh, somehow I've got to get out of this restaurant job. Somehow I've got to get out of this apartment situation I'm living in. I have no idea how or why, but it's amazing how right when we put our attention there, we start to build energy around that. And by November of 2016, so probably 11, maybe 12 months later, I was quitting my day job and going full time with my business. I had reached a point
So
where,
good.
where I realized that I was making 70% of my earnings through my own business versus 30% at the restaurant. And I was like, okay, it's time. I can take
Time.
this.
Yeah.
Enough. And so I did. And the same week that I went full time with my business, so I gave like a 3-week notice, the final week of my day job, I met my husband.
Yep.
So I was leaping toward my life. And so it was a simultaneous feeling around finances and love, because it's just abundance, as you know. And I got deeply that year. I can have whatever I want. I can have whatever I want as long as I'm willing to ask for it and say no to anything else that isn't that.
Yeah. And I love that you just went right into that, because like that's also like the next question that I asked was like, usually it's like, what's the money story that sort of like held you back, or the money story you had to confront along the way in your journey? And you named it as scarcity. And I feel like that's the lens that a lot of people live in this world with. And it exists in love too, that there's this,
if I'm not enough, there's not enough. It's just not enough.
It's not enough. And if it's not enough, I can't have it. And also that love is this thing that it comes in the form of a relationship or a friendship or family. There's nothing in between. You can't be and it's just such a scarcity lens. And it's like, no, it doesn't exist that way. And I love how you pointed out that once you started to choose yourself and to start really focusing on the joy of life and what you want to do, that all of a sudden the money started to come in, because money's neutral. So if you have a high vibration, it's coming to you, and that's all it
Right.
really takes. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then you got, after that, you start manifesting more than just money. It's like,
Right.
then you met your husband as well in that same week that you decided to leap into the life that
Yeah.
lit you up.
Yeah. And it's, it's interesting because through all those years, you can just imagine with the sort of profile that I created around who I was being in love, money just burned holes in my pockets because I was always wanting more and more and more. I was always seeking outside of myself. And so I always wanted the next, and it was always this hunger for love, hunger for things, hunger for being in another place, hunger for someday I'll be there where I have this or that. And, there's been a disillusionment that's also had to happen around money, just as much as love, to finally be in a point where it's like, oh my God, I'm that person now on Facebook that when I was living in Madison, Wisconsin with my mom, having my business, and bless my mom's heart. I mean, there's no shame in that, but that was my reality then. I was afraid to pay rent, and have a business. And then I moved to New York. So that was also part of just like going to one of the most expensive cities to learn to live, moving from Madison, living with my mom. And now I'm paying rent in this, city. But now I'm here where I love where I live, and I've been self-employed now fully for over 3 years, and I continue to grow. My income continues to grow, but I've also had to face the disillusionment of the story of what's going to happen when I have more money. Because guess what? Like I say this about relationship too, wherever you go, there you are. So whether you land and now I have a bunch of money or I have the great relationship, I can still wake up depressed, and I still have to get present to what are the needs that I'm not meeting, or where have I gotten myself trapped in another sort of cage that I need to break free from,
It's that level of awareness that like the journey's never over. Like that was, the big one, that's why I say the pain point, because it was like the turnaround. I feel like it's like the awakening, waking up, consciousness, whatever you want to, being empowered. There's so many changing of a mindset, but it's that then has you realize that you have a choice in this life of what you want to create, and having all of that. And then also that, money is the hugest illusion as well as love. And I love that they're so interrelated, but money is just a relationship.
Yeah.
And when people want to confront it on, it's funny because like you're talking about love and everything else, and it's the same thing when it comes to money. That's why when people usually find love, sometimes money starts happening because it's just about you choosing yourself and knowing that the power exists within you, and that money isn't this thing. Just like a man or a relationship isn't this thing. It's none of the things that are outside of us that are ever going to bring us joy and happiness and love, unless we learn to cultivate that for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and that's the sort of next terrain for me is like now, I have 3 years of building this business, and, it's a big transition when you go from working part-time at a business to going full-time. I work from home. Sometimes that's great. A lot of times it's been too isolating. So I've really had to look at from a needs-based perspective, what does it look like to actually be building a life out from what gives me joy and deep pleasure. And that's sort of, and I have, there have been ways in the last 3 years where I have wildly failed at that. And that like, I have really had to go, whoa, am I really happy in my life right now? And it's like, and again, nothing changed. My husband's amazing. There's great things going on with my work, but it's still about diving into my deeper purpose and deeper calling, and things can start to get stale. And if we're not listening, so now I've been facing the fears that come up of like, whoa, I can see in the future, in the next couple years, my business model potentially changing, and doing less of the one-on-one and doing more performative kind of work where I'm really a transformational entertainer, and leading into being more of the minister that I've always been called to be. And in the meantime, I'm grateful and love my one-on-one clients, and I'm that's continuing to be there. It's what's supporting me the most, and I totally can dive in and find all the gold there. And, my gifts, and I've been leaning in a lot to like Zone of Genius. I love,
Yeah.
Jay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap.
Yep,
And
it's
I've
a
been
great
really
one.
getting present to what my zone of genius really is, like thinking about in the times in my life when I felt the most alive and when it has been the most abundant, energetically, financially, just that easy, that feeling of people just paid me to do that.
Yeah.
And it was usually involving performing and storytelling, speaking / teaching in a sacred space, touring. I've toured at times and done, been hired by small spiritual centers or like Unitarian Universalist fellowships to lead their worship, and where they come and they, I get to sing and I just share, just as we're doing here, like wisdom sharing. And I end up just, it's like there might have been 25 people at one of those, but I walked away having been paid a couple $100 and then selling $184 worth of CDs. And just that sense of like people really received and I really contributed. And it's so great because when we start to place our attention in these places, it was just last week that I was like, what's my zone of genius really? Like what really brings me alive? And then by the end of the week, a dear friend of mine, and we've been in conversation about having me sing for her husband's celebration of life, who just passed in April. She actually asked me if I would be the one to facilitate, to actually like co-create the service and do the eulogy. And I will tell you, every cell in my body was like, like, yes, and so those are the things I listen to. So now it's like when it comes to the money, I've been sort of I have like 90-day goals that I have with my income, and I have a little mantra I write at the top that I create each time for like, what am I, and this one's something along the lines of like, money flows to me effortlessly as I align my work with my joy.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's really where I'm at now, is it's like, okay, great. I've shown myself I can create this solid baseline. I broke the 10K mark in a month. I felt that because that was always the end all be all. Okay, I've done that. And now, I'm still growing what it is to consistently have that. But it's becoming easier and easier. But I'm only willing to have that happen through tremendous joy and well-being, because that's choosing me,
Yes, and that's what money likes to be around. It's like that's that vibration. I mean, joy is an expression of love. It's like all of that, which then just goes into my next thing, which is like, what ways do you experience joy in your life? Because I think it's super important. I know that some people, we're going around sometimes sleepwalking and not being responsible, because we are the ones responsible for our happiness. We are the ones, not money, not other people, not relationships, not things. We are. So it's learning how to cultivate that relationship with ourselves to learn, because it changes things. Something that made you happy in the past might not anymore, a certain activity that used to. And so it's constantly asking ourselves like, well, what will make me happy? And then making it a practice to go and do that. And that is choosing, like in that, to have that experience and say, yes, I'm going to do this for myself. And so what ways do you experience joy in your life?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really is like most of the joy I felt has been through this sort of ministering. And when I get to perform, when I get to use my gift of words, and like, it's this interesting juxtaposition for me. Sometimes that's writing. Like, I love to write and speak my own words, but sometimes it's also finding, like for this celebration of life, finding the perfect readings that are just gonna, like, it's something this gift I have of helping, like just knowing what's gonna land and create whatever healing and opening someone needs to feel heard and seen, and that, and like being able to bring the music in, and it is this like really creative, purposeful, self-expressed kind of performance / ministry. And and it's like, and then other things in the day-to-day, like so one, some of my favorite self-care practices, like I love taking myself to movies. I actually like going by myself. It's like a day to treat. I like the magic and the wonder. One of my favorite needs to meet, I've really learned a core value, is discovery. So I like going, sometimes I'll go upstate, I'll take the Metro North and go to one of the small towns along the Hudson and just wander around a town for a day. And it just meets my need for spontaneity and discovery and self-connection. I've really been tuning in lately to, you and I both went to the amazing Bernadette Pleasant's Sacred Silence workshop.
So
and that
good.
Like just the dropping into that silence. I realized it yesterday. I was starting to feel depleted. Sometimes my, even halfway through a week of working with clients, I can start to go, oh God, there's 2 more days of this. And when I get there, it's like, whoa, okay. My tank is empty. So like receiving energy healing is similar to me. Right now I'm looking into doing also more like restorative yoga. There's something for me where I journal in the morning, and so that helps me get aligned. But there's something about receiving that isn't receiving, because I could go to like a coach or a therapist, and that's great. But there are times because my work is so much me talking, them talking, listening, talking, like this back and forth, I reach a point where I'm like, I just want silence. But it is about having something poured back into me. So that's where I like Reiki, energy healing, massage. Yesterday, when I realized like, whoa, I'm depleted, I was like, I have 3 hours before I kick off, a 5-hour time of working with clients. So, and I'm starting out a little depleted. So what I was like, I don't know who I can just quick go plug in and get some Reiki right now in this moment. But what I will do is go and get a pedicure and a massage and like really just be present. And I put my phone away and I let myself feel the touch and feel just that space. So it's like, it really is about tuning into needs. And like you said, the same strategy doesn't always work. It's like moment by moment. But when I'd say joy, like when you describe joy, it is those moments. I led my Sacred Standards event, my workshop on Saturday. That was joy. I just love when I'm in the zone of getting to just be on my feet. I don't know who's going to bring what question, and I have my basic outline, but I know it's going to be something magical when all these people come together. I love getting to be funny on the spot. I love it's just
the spontaneity of things. You said it, it's a word that it's a big essence of me, wonder. Like the wonder of life and just letting it surprise you. So all you have to do is show up and be like, give me what you got. And it's like the greatest stuff.
But if you basically put me in front of an audience and it's like, we just want to hear what you have to say, and however you want to say it, you're pretty much like, you've just like given me like the keys to the kingdom. That for me is like,
And your singing voice is also remarkable.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's like, and so, but it's been interesting even that, like I performed in 2018 and into 2019 at Rockwood Music Hall a few times, which was great. But I wouldn't consider my birthday, that performance, the first one, that was joy. But the consecutive, it was okay. It wasn't that like memorable, mind-blowing. And and that's where I realized that right now the word that I'm cherishing is sacred. I need to be in spaces that feel sacred. And I know I can create the sacred, but there's something about plugging into a space where people are already expecting that you're going to use the word God. And I don't have to worry about it being too much, or I just want to, I could talk about the divine until like, I don't know, like I can do it. It just, and that's a kind of a new edge for me is, and through the years I've been open about that. I haven't been a closet sort of minister, but I think I go through times where I kind of can easily, like I'm a self-love and relationship coach. Really, I am a spiritual teacher and minister who happens to be an expert in the realm of self-love and relationship. And so that's where I focus. But the essence of it is like, are you, let's remove this illusion that you're separate from anything and that love is anything but living through in and as you.
Perfect. And then, so that's really my last thing where it was like, 3 years, or is there a tool or something you would like to share with people watching that, I don't know, you would have liked to tell your younger self, or just something that you would just like to, a golden nugget to leave people with?
So I would say really it's sort of the most common misconception that I see is, like myself, I see women who are really generous and really loving, and they hear like spiritual teachings, like, as you give, you receive, or, and it's like, and then they go, but I'm being so generous and I give and I give and I give. And like, I just keep feeling like these people reject or abandon me or whatever. And so what I want to just really leave people with is that, as I kind of opened up with in the beginning, is that it's actually, all relationship is truly a reflection of the one you're having with yourself. And I want you to notice, were you ever giving in fear? Were you giving to get something? As you were saying before, like the manipulative thing, like were you giving, did you say yes to this thing because it was a joy in your heart, or because you were afraid to say no? Did you give to this person because you're hoping in giving they're going to turn around and give to you, right? And what you'll notice in doing that is that you're sacrificing yourself. So what looks like generosity out here, if there's any form of sacrifice that's going on here, what you are going to get is what you gave, which is you being sacrificed.
Yes.
So it's literally just 100% mirrored. If I'm willing to sacrifice me, others will also be willing, and that will be my reality again and again and again. So you actually have to learn how to receive. You actually have to learn how to face the fear and the story of, like, isn't that selfish and high maintenance? And am I going to be a bitch if I say that and ask for that? You have to face that and become such a fierce stand. It's actually integrating the masculine in with the feminine and guarding the perimeter of your own well-being in order to experience that kind of masculine energy showing up in your life to fully claim you. And when I say that, I don't mean a man, because this could be, if you are a feminine identified energetic core, we're just talking about the energy that comes in and claims and protects and provides, right? So you have to do that first. And so that would be really it, is just flipping that story around, understanding what's really going on when you're giving. If it's not being mirrored outwardly, check your motivation. It's probably fear. And if it's fear and it's not truly rooted in loving, just choosing yourself, like your well-being, then you're going to just keep being sacrificed.
Yeah, so well said, because that's what brings on expectation. And it's like giving unconditionally because you just want to, because it's a joy to give.
Yeah.
Versus giving out of desperation and wanting to be liked and needed and all of that stuff, because you're just going to get more of what you're giving. So to really check into your why, your intention. I love you use the word motivation, and just really start getting honest about like what's driving the action that you're taking.
Yeah, and it can be tricky because some women listen to this, I am an unconditionally loving person. I just love to give and give and give. But it requires tuning into your own feelings. And if there's any pain being associated around the giving, if you're left depleted, if you're left disappointed because something didn't happen over here, if you're left feeling resentful, you're not listening to your inner navigational system. You're ignoring your boundaries, and therefore you're sacrificing. So,
So good. Well, thank you for that, because that was such a huge golden nugget. I think something people could really just apply right now after watching this, and just starting to really, if they choose to get honest and just see like what's driving their choices and their actions. And just always thank you for coming on and playing with me today. And then I'm going to have on here your website so that people could get more information if they want to learn more about you, the work that you do. She's absolutely magnificent. And
what I'll say is that for anyone listening, if you are identifying with my story, if even this last nugget, you're like, oh my gosh, yes, but how do I really catch myself doing that? I am opening up my schedule for anyone to connect with me for what I call a choose you conversation. It's a complimentary, it's my gift to anyone watching. And you can just, you're welcome even to just click on my Facebook and like private message me or whatever, to connect about around that and get on my calendar so we can really look at that and like create, like get to what's going on underneath and create a path for you moving forward.
Yeah. And for anyone who's curious, do it. I've done work with her and it works. It happens. Be another interview for another day, but definitely if you want to get clear around what it is that you want to create, and if you don't know, she is just ridiculously awesome at what it is that you do. And so I'm just honored that you're a friend and that in my world. So thank you again for coming on and playing with me. Once I post this, I will have I'll tag you so they'll be able to find your Facebook. I also have your website so that people could find you. And so you can just go out and do your thing. So just thank you again for coming on and playing with me today.
Thank you. You're welcome. I love you so much.
Love you too, love.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining.